Got it. All right, folks, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Friday, May 3rd, 2019. Did the Tennessee Speaker of the House try to frame a civil rights activist as well as use racial slurs in reference to him? The district attorney there wants answers. I kept telling y'all, the state of Florida was not going to let the formerly incarcerated get that right to vote so easy. So guess what? The Florida Senate has now passed a bill demanding full restitution from all those formerly incarcerated, full restitution before they get the right to vote. The ACLU and others say they are ready to sue. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts is one of the new CBC members. I had a conversation with her about Bill Barr, guns, and Medicare for all. Great conversation. Can't wait till you see it. Also, what's wrong with some of these white kids? I'll show you the most racist prom proposal you'll see this prom season. Crazy as white folks segment is back. Plus, the unemployment rate, the lowest since it has been recorded, 1969, but doesn't mean our economy is strong. We'll break it down right here. And, of course, we'll, continue to pay tribute to John Singleton. Jeff Friday of American Black Film Festival will join us to share his thoughts on the great director who was a huge supporter of ABFF. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. Yeah, it's Uncle Roro, y'all. Yeah, it's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
Republicans in Tennessee do not like being challenged, and one of the folks who has done so this entire session has been activist Justin Jones. Well, they have not been happy with him. A lot of issues have come up that activists have been upset about, including voting rights and removing the bust of Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest from the state capitol. Well, Justin Jones was arrested for assault after a cup was thrown onto the speaker's elevator. He was released on the condition he have no more contact with House Speaker Glenn Casada. But the issue, though, is not Justin Jones. The issue is Speaker Glenn Casada. A local outlet there in Tennessee, they've been reporting that the Speaker of the House was busted using racial slurs in text messages with regards to Justin Jones. Now they're trying to cover that up. So the question is, what is going to happen in Tennessee? Should there be any repercussion in Tennessee as well? The DA in that particular area has been demanding answers as well in terms of these text messages. And so could we see some serious trouble? Some activists say that that Glenn Casada, frankly, was trying to frame Justin Jones to get arrested. Now the DA wants a special prosecutor to investigate exactly what took place there in Tennessee. This here, folks, is a piece I'm going to play for you in a second. News Channel 5, which is located there in Tennessee, they've been really on top of this story. It was their investigation, and again, they say that racist text messages were exchanged by this particular Speaker of the House. It was a damning report. I was sent this by several activists there in Tennessee, folks who have been really upset and angry at what has been going on in that state. Activists have been really focused on the various bills that have been passed there as well. And so go to my iPad, Henry. This is the piece from News Channel 5. Okay. All right, not sure why we're not getting any audio. All right, guys, so let's let me check it again. Let's see here. I'm going to see if I can reset this here. Take this off. Let's try it now. Here we go.
Exclusive News Channel 5 investigation has uncovered racist text messages and the possibility of doctored documents, all linked to the Speaker's Chief of Staff.
You are racist!
Justin Jones, a divinity student at Vanderbilt, has been a thorn in the side of House Speaker Glenn Casada all session long. In late February, he was arrested for throwing a cup at the Speaker. He was released on bond on the condition he have no contact with Casada.
I've obeyed it this many months later, have not had any contact with Casada or have not been at the Capitol, so have followed the no contact order.
But in early March, DA Glenn Funk's office filed this motion to revoke Jones' bond, citing an email Jones sent to Casada's Chief of Staff, Cade Cothran. That was copied to the House Speaker, thus violating his bond conditions. Jones knew it wasn't true.
It was a shock because it was my freedom. It was me. If this would have went through to revoke my bond, I would be in jail right now until my court date. And so this is not something I take lightly.
News Channel 5 Investigates discovered the DA's motion was based on this photo of an email with the date of March 1st, just one day after the no contact order. But Jones had the original email. The real date, February 25th, which was before his arrest. The DA's office admits their evidence came from the Speaker's Chief of Staff. Casada's office say they did nothing wrong. They insist they did not alter the email, and they blame the state's email system for the discrepancy in dates.
We've all had an email that we've sent, got clogged in our system, we shut our computer down, or whatever else happens, and it gets sent a day or two later.
Republican Majority Leader William Lamberth admits Jones likely sent the email on February 25th, but it was not delivered to the Speaker's office until March 1st because of the legislature's email security filters. Our investigation also uncovered disturbing text messages by Cade Cothran. In an exchange with Casada, Cothran appears to refer to a West Tennessee district with this black people meme. In a text with other friends, Cothran says, quote, "Black people are idiots," and insists that Tampa Bay quarterback Jameis Winston be called a, quote, "thug N-word." We emailed the text messages to Cothran, and he did not deny they were his.
How can you defend that? Does that say something about your attitude toward African Americans?
Still, the Speaker's Chief of Staff refused to comment.
You have Cade, the Speaker's Chief of Staff, calling someone a thug here. And I question, is that how they see us each time we go up there and say, you know, we would like a meeting with the Speaker to talk about voter suppression and how it is racialized. We would like to talk to the Speaker about why we have a KKK statue in our state capitol.
I've worked 10 years with my Chief of Staff. We've left Nashville at 5 in the morning and worked till midnight, traveling the state for almost 10 years. I've never in those 10 years seen any kind of racist or bigoted action out of him. And so if an individual is willing to run a story that's not true about receiving emails, what else are they making up? So I stand by my Chief of Staff on his character because I know his character.
Meanwhile, the state Democratic Party called on Cothran to be fired, and many Democrats were shocked to see him walking around the legislature.
We're all surprised to see him up here. He shouldn't be in this building. He shouldn't even be in state government anymore.
That's mayoral candidate Representative John Ray Clemens speaking there. Now, Speaker Cassidy's office says they asked the district attorney to withdraw the motion to have Jones' bond revoked as soon as they realized there could be a problem with the email. That motion was withdrawn, but late yesterday, the DA confirmed he is requesting a special prosecutor to look into these allegations. You can read Speaker Cassidy's full statement along with all the emails and text messages. They're posted on our website, newschannel5.com.
All right, folks, again, that's a News Channel 5 there in Tennessee. Let's go to our panel here. Dr. Julian Malveaux, economist, president emerita at Bennett College. Also joining us in studio, Johanna LeBlanc, national security and foreign affairs legal analyst. And joining us via Skype is Teresa Lundy, founder TML Communications. Teresa, I want to start with you. Here's what's interesting. So you have this chief of staff who does not deny the text messages. But you have the Speaker of the House defending him. Oh, I don't know anything about, never seen any kind of racism whatsoever. I'm just saying, when your chief of staff won't deny the text messages, you got a problem.
You absolutely have a problem, Roland. And I always say your representative is always reflective of the people that you hire. So, yes, I do agree with the activist. It's unfortunate that he actually went through this, but it does uncover a lot of things that it says about the representative and how he views African Americans. And when we come to their offices and bring our issues of voting rights suppression, of discrimination, and all types of issues that obviously aren't being put up to the legislator, because you have those who are blocking the conscious conversation that needs to happen. So I think, obviously there should have been more handling of the chief of staff with Case, where there should have been some disciplinary actions. I don't think the story was untrue or false. Just like we saw in the News 5 clip, where there was another legislator that said, between 1 to 2 days, the email could have got lost. Well, this was primarily of 5 to 7 days that the email landed in the mailbox. And I believe if the News 5 actually retained the messages of the House of the internal technical system, they would see more than likely that email was falsified and was in collusion with the rest of the discriminatory that the young man faced. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully some remedy actually takes place.
Julian, I really do get a kick out of all the dancing the folks do. I mean, here's a guy who is the Speaker of the House, who is a leader, and your chief of staff, guilty as all get out. And by him standing there defending him, now we can call into question your motives.
Precisely. I mean, this man, it was, like you said, it was literally hilarious to watch him try to spin that thing. And if they would call out, as Teresa said, if you would call out, well, it takes a couple of days to get there. Well, if it took a couple of days, why didn't the young man get the benefit of the doubt? The email was sent before he had the restraining order. They came up after and tried to deal with it. But this is a pattern in practice of attempting to basically discredit activists, and kudos to the young brother for standing his ground on this. Pattern practice of discrediting an activist, pattern practice of basically attempting voter suppression, but activist suppression. We saw it. We talked a couple weeks ago about, was this also Tennessee, where they're suppressing the vote?
Yeah.
And so basically this is an attempt to suppress the vote and suppress activism. It's very interesting that Tennessee is a state where Ida B. Wells did her first lynching investigations. And she talked about lynching being the ultimate form of intimidation. This young man was not lynched physically, but metaphorically, the way that he's been treated as a young brother who's an activist is a lynching. And it harkens back to what Ida B. Wells was talking about, the intimidation. What ex-activists is going to step up again now, as well as the activists who are registering voters but now face fines? This is a state that has a very deep history of our blood is drenched in the soil of this state, where Ida B. Wells documented so many lynchings, and now were she here, she would have to document the voter suppression, the character assassination, and the attempt to really take away a young man's not only freedom, but also his good name.
Johanna?
Yeah, so I agree with what the activists have been calling for, which is the resignation of the member's chief of staff. Because when you have a chief of staff who's making racial slurs and who is, in essence, dehumanizing an activist, right? It tells me about your agenda in that office, right? It tells me that the agenda of black folks, the agenda of issues impacting people of color is not going to be brought to the forefront, and you're not going to necessarily care about those issues because you don't even see us as human beings. You see some of us as, well, you see us as thugs, as the N-word as he used in his email. So it is very problematic to me because I think that that is a way to also chill the speech of many activists, right? It's a way to let you know that your voice don't matter, so don't come here. And the fact that this member is actually supporting and stands behind his chief of staff in light of all these facts tells me something about him and his character and his position pertaining to people of color.
He should be the one who resigns. His chief of staff should resign, but frankly, so should he. He has shown himself to be unfit for leadership.
One of the issues that we have here, again, and I keep telling, I love all these Republicans who always say, why y'all keep calling us racist? Because you keep doing racist shit. I mean, that's just how it happens. I mean, anytime you see these things happen, typically it's a Republican who is sending out racist comments, things along those lines. And so if you keep having more people like that who are in your party, it might say something about your party. And so I'm just letting y'all know just how this whole thing goes. Speaking of the nonsense of Republicans, first of all, we also, Justin Jones, we had booked him on the show, but he couldn't appear without his attorney. And so we could not get him with his attorney on, so we'll try to have him on again. Speaking of the absolute nonsense from Republicans, folks, on May 2nd, the Florida Senate, that's right, approved making ex-felons pay fees to have the right to vote. Now, you might remember, Amendment 4 was passed in November. 65% of the people voted that changed the Constitution to restore the voting rights to folks who were formerly incarcerated, except those who were convicted of murder and things along those lines. It was a huge, huge deal. Desmond Meade, his wife Sheena Meade, they led this effort, but I warned them, and I warned you, chill, because trust me, Republicans were not going to be silent and watch upwards of 1.4 million people added to the voting rolls in Florida. So what do you think happened? The Senate has passed it. The House has now passed it. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis has not said whether or not he is going to sign this into law. Here's the argument that they are making. They are making the argument that full restitution means not just you serve your sentence, but you paid back every dime to the victims, also to the state. So what they're saying with this bill here, and in order for you to get your right to vote, you would have to pay back all fees, meaning if a judge ordered you to repay a victim $125,000, you would have to pay back the full $125,000 in order for you to get your right to vote. One of the arguments that they are using is that they're saying that even the lawyers for the folks with Amendment 4, that when they went to the Supreme Court to get this certified, that they said that could be an example of full restitution. The question is, did the Amendment 4 lawyers make a huge mistake? Because Republicans are trying to hang their hat on that technicality. But the bottom line is this here. Even though voters went to the polls in November to pass this, and the intent was to give those who were formerly incarcerated the right to vote back, the Florida legislature, led by Republicans in the House and the Senate, and this Republican governor, they may very well say, the hell with what the voters decided, we are going to determine who gets the right to vote back. Julian, I keep trying to tell black people and everybody else, Republicans are not going to stand idly by and watch voter initiatives change what they want. They know that if you start registering those folks formerly incarcerated, it could change the balance of power in the state of Florida. And I said this was going to happen. I kept telling people, stop. Y'all better be prepared for it.
Celebrating is what
and look, and even Desmond said, man, you told us, but and if they're still trying to hold out hope that this won't get signed, forget that. Ron DeSantis will sign this into law.
He will sign it into law, and it is a poll tax. And let's look at our history of poll taxes. Back in the day, when people, formerly enslaved people, went to go vote, they started imposing taxes. They had various reading tests and all of that. This is a poll tax. And as you say, if someone owed a victim $125,000 and they've just come out of jail, the likelihood of them getting $125,000 extra in the next 10 years is very low. So they really will not be able to vote. we don't know what other kinds of fines. This becomes very discretionary. How many other kinds of fines will be piled on? Other kinds of costs will be piled on? Will they add interest, Roland? I mean, that becomes another issue. And so this really is a circumvention of the people's will. But as you said, and as many have said, when we're looking at these Republicans, all you have to do is look up on Capitol Hill to see what's happening with these liars who are defending that man who lives in the White House, the house that enslaved people built. All you have to do is look up there and say that these people have no sense of integrity, no sense of honesty, no sense of truth. The people spoke, and what they're saying is, oh, hell no, we're not going to let it happen.
Johanna, hold tight 1 second. This is an explainer about what took place in Florida. This is from the Miami Herald website. Okay, not sure why we're not getting any audio. We have it. So let's see if we can try this again. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna reset this, folks. Just bear with me. And so again, this is from the Miami Herald website.
Everyone in Florida can vote. There is an estimated 1.5 million Florida citizens who are banned from voting because they were convicted of a felony. Greg James, pastor of Life Church International, is one of them.
And the effect that it has is that there are members in my ministry who believe in me, who follow my instructions, whose lives have been changed. And here it is, I'm subject to where I can live. I'm subject to the different situations that I have to encounter, checking the box. I mean, I'm subject to even understanding about getting back in college. There's so much that hinders the process when you don't have your rights. Absolutely. I've served my time.
You're done with probation?
Done with probation, but I'm still in a limited capacity of how I'm able to live life, pay taxes. If I don't pay taxes, guess what? They're coming after me. So there's taxation without no representation. It's a bad state to be. So is it possible that people will reoffend? Of course. But the opportunity to be made whole again kind of puts that possibility at a disadvantage, because now you got something to live for, you got your life back again, and without being restored, it makes life difficult for you. I even made the effort because I already know that it's a useless effort because the time frame that is required. So to petition would be just a waste of time when I already know it takes up to 12 years. Yeah, so I haven't even thought about it.
When I asked them, you want to register to vote, they don't really want to say why, but you can see when they avert their eyes. We've done something psychological to a whole group of people who, quite frankly, we've re-traumatized them, because the evidence shows if you want people to participate properly in society, you've got to give them a stake in that society. As an election official, for example, the #1 indice for who votes and who doesn't vote is, do you own a home? If you have a stake, particularly a physical stake in society, you will get participation in that process. By excluding people from the process, you actually give them a reason not to participate, because they can't.
All right, Johanna, this is, again, when the voters passed it to change the state constitution, they want to steal the election next year.
See, here's my position on this. I think voting is a civic duty, and it's also a fundamental right. And what's happening here is a direct attack on the poor, right? Because as we know, when people are released from prison, it is extremely hard, difficult to find employment. We know a lot of employers discriminate against individuals who have criminal records. So in most cases, they're not able to find employment, right? You can't even buy a burger, can't even find a place to live. Now you want them to pay back restitution before they can vote, right? To engage in a civic duty. But another point I have is that I think the Amendment 4 lawyers made a mistake. I think that language was foreseeable, that it will be challenged, that it will come up again when this is discussed in the Florida legislature. So I think that I'm not going to say I'm not going to blame anyone, but I do think that it was an error. We should have looked at that language much closer. And as Senator Thurston said, he said, if paying one's bill were the key to be able to vote, a very large segment of the population will be disfranchised, including myself, right? As someone who went to law school, who has enormous student loans, right? I would not be able to vote. So I think that we definitely need to revisit that that mandate, and it needs to be discussed thoroughly. And I am appalled, I'm disgusted as someone who is from this, I grew up in Florida, in Orange County to be specific, and to see what's happening. I was so happy about Amendment 4 when it was passed. You know, I called my friends and I said, you know, thank God now we can finally have the right to vote after you've served your debt to society, but look what has happened. It needs to be challenged, and I'm not sure what the next step is.
Teresa.
I think it's a disgrace. You know, we say we love for those that have second chances, but I think the restitution piece is really heartfelt, because inside of prison, people are making 14 to 21 cents an hour. And then when they come out and try to get another job in society, they're being denied. So they're being denied housing and being denied employment. And so we look to our elected officials and our elected leaders to be in our best interest to represent the people. But then we have disgraceful tactics like this in order to bound some of our people, especially the poor people in those communities that they want to gentrify and also create opportunities for developers. So I'm not in agreement with it at all. And I do agree with the other two ladies that obviously a time of change definitely needs to come. But I do think this is a national cry, because if they're able to pull this off in that city, then I think this is something, the playbook that they will use in other cities and states, and we can't let that happen.
Speaking of the playbook, today a federal panel ruled that the Ohio congressional districts are unconstitutional because of clear partisan gerrymandering. Henry, go to my iPad. What you're seeing right now, folks, this is actually the congressional districts in Ohio. There are 4 congressional districts. Now, if you look at this map, you can see how how you really have these concentration of voters in Republican districts, but how you have this sort of snake effect, if you will, for the Democratic districts. This is an effort for them to keep Democratic voters out of some areas, to guarantee Republicans are in control. This ruling by the federal court, folks, was unbelievable. And what's also interesting is that Democrats have been talking about, Republicans have been quiet. Here's this line here. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur testified in the case that her district was hacked apart by Republicans. The so-called snake by the lake stretches in a thin line from Toledo to Ohio. Toledo to Ohio. And that's how they have actually drawn these districts. The federal judges basically said this is undeniable plans by Republicans to disenfranchise Democratic voters. Now, why is this a huge issue? Because we are seeing gerrymandering take place all across the country. There's a district in Maryland where Republicans are criticizing Republicans are criticizing Democrats. You have gerrymandering in Wisconsin. They ran the numbers. If Democrats win 55% of all seats, they still are in the minority in Wisconsin because of how the Republicans have created these districts. You might remember in the last election, the federal courts threw out the districts in Pennsylvania. That's why Democrats were able to pick up seats in Congress. You also have gerrymandering taking place in North Carolina, in Michigan, all across the country. What's the problem? The Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, could very well allow this to take place. If they allow this to take place, Julian, you're going to see every Republican legislature immediately create not just congressional districts, but state Senate districts, state representative districts all across the country that will guarantee they remain in power and completely disenfranchise Democratic voters. And what that means, disenfranchising Black people, disenfranchising Latinos.
You know, the thing about it, Roland, is that it's also a census issue. We're looking at coming up on the 2020 census. We're going to look at lines being drawn around that. The congressional districts, appropriations hinge on some of that in terms of population, how that happens. Really, we're talking about a complete takeover by the Republicans of every chamber of legislature where you have Republicans. So no, they won't get California, and there are a couple other places they won't get. They probably won't get much of Maryland, but they will get Ohio, they will get Wisconsin, probably get Michigan, Texas, and we can just call the roll. This is patently unfair, but what we have to recall is that this was not intended to be fair. There have been some naive Democrats who run around talking about fairness. Well, there is no fairness when you have predatory capitalism and basically dollars are on the table. And that's what's going on. Dollars are on the table, people's rights are on the table, and we can look at what we just talked about in terms of Florida. We can look at what we're talking about in terms of Tennessee. We can look all over the country, and the point is that these folks want absolute utter dominance, because what's at stake is not just our voting rights, it's our economic rights. We look at what's happening with the Labor Department passing regulations that don't go through Congress, that are taking away people's rights. So that's what's at stake, our basic survival.
Teresa, looking at this story here from about Pennsylvania, where the state Supreme Court overthrew it. They have some of the most gerrymandered districts there in Pennsylvania. On the congressional side, Democrats won 51% of the statewide popular vote in U.S. House races, yet only won 5 out of 18 congressional districts. The state Supreme Court blasted it, said it was clear and plain that this was partisan politics at play here.
I agree. And a friend of mine works for Common Cause PA, so that was actually the focal point of their research. And we actually saw that play out here in one of the 67 counties in PA, which is Philadelphia, where there was a debate about some of the districts and the way they were being redistricted and how the people wanted to be a part of that redistricting structure. And so when we had an election in 2017, it was for Congressman Brendan Boyle, and a new elected candidate. We saw some of his district actually get shifted into a majority white area, where it had more of the suburban area district, which would actually be more to his benefit as a Democrat, but more so cut off from some of the minorities. So I think, also talking about that split and the way that happened, because, if elected officials feels comfortable in a certain area where most of the people are either liberal or LGBTQIA, I think, or Catholic, I think, that's also a way that it also suggests a vote either way. So we need to take a look at that as well.
Johanna, I'm showing right now, this is the Wisconsin gerrymandering. And look at this map. Look at how they did it. First of all, in 2008, Democrats had 52 seats. Republicans, first of all, Democrats had 52 seats, got 1.47 million votes. Republicans had 46 seats, got 1.172 million votes. Let's go to 2010. Democrats got 38 seats after gerrymandering. Republicans got 60. Okay, vote totals 838,000, 1.1 million. I'm sorry, 2010 was when we had the midterm elections. This was the impact of the midterm elections. 2 years later, now mind you, 2008, again, for the people who are watching at home, I'm walking you through this because the problem is when you hear political gerrymandering, people go, it's like, okay, I don't really know what the hell that is. This has a direct impact on power. Julian laid it out, a direct impact on resources. So in 2008, when it was 52-46 Democrats, okay? Democrats got more votes. 2010 midterm elections, Republicans landslide across the country. They got 1.1 million votes, 160 seats. Democrats had 838,000 votes, 138. But this was the impact just 2 years later. 2 years later, Democrats got 1.4 million votes statewide in Wisconsin. Only 139 seats, Johanna. Republicans got 1.2 million votes, 200,000 less, yet won 60 seats. This is about power, resources, control. And what does this mean? This impacts judges. It impacts civil rights. It impacts environmental rights. It impacts women's rights. And this guarantees, Republican control of state legislatures, which means gubernatorial mansions. And you see what happened in North Carolina when they passed bills, strip power from the Democratic governor, which is the same thing Republicans are trying to do right now in Kansas, trying to do right now in Wisconsin. Johanna.
As everyone has articulated, you know, gerrymandering is about who gets what, when, and how, right? So the fact that you have politicians, and not only politicians, we have to keep this in mind, interest groups who are fighting to ensure that certain individuals have access to certain districts says something. It says that your vote matters, right? Which is why, you know, it is critical for you to partake in this duty that you have.
Yeah,
and
but
also,
when they're trying to take the vote, fully incarcerated in Florida, when they're trying to use voter suppression and voter ID, throwing in gerrymandering, it is there to frustrate you so you don't care and you stay at home and you say, I got no power. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the point I was trying to make is, you know, you have to be, you know, to resist those systems, right? And we have to rally ourselves and to fight. And the attorneys who are experts when it comes to voting laws, right? When it comes to gerrymandering, we have to fight. You know, nothing that African Americans have gotten in America has been handed to us. We had to fight for everything that we have.
And let me say,
to vote, our right to housing, our right to even being labeled as human beings, not animal, right? We have to fight for it all, so we have to continue to fight.
And let me say this to all y'all people out there who running your damn mouth in 2016, who said Hillary Clinton was the same as Donald Trump. What I'm about to say ain't got a damn thing to do with who's a Democrat, who's a Republican, who's liberal or conservative. It's called the outcome of elections. And that is this. You were a damn fool for trying to say that Hillary Clinton is the same as Donald Trump. I don't give a damn if you disagree with her super predator comment, which I did. I don't care if you didn't like all of her policies. Here is the result of 2016. Merrick Garland got screwed. Obama got screwed because he played the game trying to be fair. Republicans were never going to play fair. He should have appointed a black woman because that would have got people all more fired up to vote in 2016. And I still contend that. And Obama people, y'all love them all you want to, but I don't give a damn. Should have appointed a black woman. So what happened? Republicans win. Trump wins. He appoints Neil Gorsuch. Okay, the 5th conservative vote on the Supreme Court. Then, of course, Kennedy retires. What do? Replace him with Kavanaugh, also on the right. Kennedy was the one who was a swing vote on gerrymandering. Gorsuch could very well be the one to say gerrymandering is fine. So some of y'all are sitting at home right now, and it's 2020, and y'all are sitting here saying, oh, you got Trump, and let's see among the Democrats. But do understand, the person who wins the White House appoints federal judges. The other day, Trump stood up talking about the 100th federal judge who he appointed, meaning they're going to be there for life. I just told y'all Damon J. Keith died on Sunday, age 96, was still hearing cases. He was 96 years old. And so if you think that the presidential race has no bearing on your life, let me explain to you. President appoints Supreme Court, which impacts gerrymandering, state level, gubernatorial mansions, state senate, state reps, which then impacts county government, city hall, boards of education. It impacts the entire process. Julian mentioned censusing. Millions, billions of dollars tied to census. Who control how censuses are determined? Districts, population. At some point, y'all got to tell Pookie and Laquan and tell Keisha and tell Kim and all these confused-ass black people who believe that this stuff doesn't matter has a direct impact, because when you sue for discrimination, who's going to be the judge hearing your case? When you want to file a class action lawsuit, who's hearing your case? Who's hearing cases right now on environmental justice, on environmental racism? Who's hearing any of these cases? Don't think for a second that who the president is has no bearing on your life. All of this is a result of this political system. And if you sit out, that's exactly what they want you to do. Exactly. Because they want you to stay home. They want you to stay home. Literally, 20 seconds, I got to go to my next interview. Go ahead.
Some of us live in progressive enclaves like D.C. or San Francisco or Seattle. But what these conservative state legislatures are doing are attempting to avoid the laws in these progressive enclaves. And so when they go to court, when San Francisco sues, who are the judges who are going to hear that?
And I think that's a very good comment when it comes to the judiciary, right? Because for the average person, the Supreme Court is an anomaly, not understanding that the ruling of the Supreme Court judges have lifetime effects, right?
Yeah.
Most people can't even tell you who sits on the Supreme Court.
Not even lifetime, generational.
Generational,
yeah. Generational.
Exactly.
All right, folks, speaking of, we talk about the impact, of course, in 2018, we saw a whole slew of new Democrats come into Congress. One of them is Ayanna Pressley, of course, out of Massachusetts. She ran against a longtime Democrat, was not supported by the Democratic Party, was not supported by many CBC members, but this sister, she's still organized and mobilized, and she won. She's in Congress fighting for Medicare for all. I had a chance to talk to her yesterday about a slew of topics. Here's our conversation. First and foremost, Congresswoman, I want to cover several different things, but first, the absolute I can't even think of the word to use, but the contempt that the Trump administration has for Congress, ignoring subpoenas, the testimony of Bill Barr, just your assessment of how they do not care about a co-equal branch of government.
Just complete lawlessness. And this is exactly why I do support the resolution to initiate impeachment proceedings. I think that this administration has given us a credible cause. They've lost moral authority a long time ago. But I think with the Mueller report, what was unredacted does prove obstruction of justice, witness tampering. I think Mueller is sort of like a by-the-book guy, a constitutionalist, which is why he neither indicted or exonerated. But I think he left us some breadcrumbs, and left us not only a roadmap, but the runway as a co-equal branch of government to assume our role. And it's just been complete and utter disregard. I feel demoralized and disrespected, and I fear for our country. And I just want to underscore that because we're making this about this administration and the occupant in the corner office. But history will define us by this moment. This is bigger than Donald Trump. This is about the office of the presidency. And given the lawlessness and the complete disregard by Trump and this administration, I think, neither of us want to go down this path, but we must go down this path because ultimately this is about the precedents that we're setting for the office of the presidency. And I don't know how we restore the American people's faith in government with these steady threats to our democracy and the undermining of this institution.
I understand why Democratic leadership, they're reticent to actually go down the impeachment process. But clearly, even just the ignoring of subpoenas, we now have a story where the White House counsel has sent a letter to the Attorney General saying Donald Trump has informed his aides to completely ignore subpoenas. That's right. That's where, at least that's where Congress has to say, fine, you ignore subpoena, you're going to get arrested.
Absolutely. So first they were stonewalling at every turn, and now they're stonewalling. Again, there's credible evidence of obstruction of justice, and now they're just a complete no-show. So this is just lawlessness, and no one is above the law, including the occupant and this administration. And so, again, it's sobering. People, this is very, very triggering. We don't want to, when we think of Watergate, and, it's a stain on the country. And so this is nothing to be entered into cavalierly or casually. I don't want to do this, but I think we've been left with no other choice or recourse. And Roland, might I add, we often present these scenarios in these binary choices, but it's not an or proposition. It's and. Let's initiate impeachment proceedings while also continuing to hold this administration accountable, using every tool available to us to leverage. I'm so glad I'm on the Oversight and Reform Committee under the leadership of Chairman Cummings to do that, and continuing to legislate on behalf of the American people. So there are three legs to this stool.
Let's talk about health care. First of all, breaking news, the Trump administration is going even further to oppose the Affordable Care Act. They have filed a brief that will wipe out essentially the entire Affordable Care Act. You also advocating Medicare for all. I mean, these two things are converging at the same time.
You know, this is it's unconscionable, and he has broken ostensibly every campaign promise that he made. I mean, they just came out of the 2018 cycle saying that they believe that we should preserve some tenets of the ACA, specifically coverage for those with pre-existing conditions, and that's completely, been thrown out. You run on an agenda of making America great again, and then in this 116th Congress, the first thing you do is hold the American worker and family hostage in the midst of a temper tantrum, and shut down the federal government. So this is very consistent with how this administration has been moving. I do think, again, when we talk about health care, this is also a situation of and not or. We have to do everything to fight to protect the ACA. In my district, the Massachusetts 60+% of my constituents live with pre-existing conditions. Our first hearing in an oversight and reform was about the need to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. We had a mother, Roland there, a black mother there, talking about her two daughters who lived with type 1 diabetes. Unfortunately, she went to wake her oldest daughter for school, only to find that she had passed away 16 years old because they were rationing insulin. So we need to do everything to stave off the threats from this administration to the ACA. But we knew the ACA all along was the floor, not the ceiling. The ultimate goal here is universal health care, and Medicare for all is a bold step in the right direction. When people are paying for their medical bills through GoFundMe pages, we know that we're at a crisis. This is an inflection point. And so I know that there are those that think it is too aspirational and it is too bold, but this is an issue of consequence to the American people. And further, given the access issues and growing health disparities, I think keeping people unhealthy is just another tool of oppression. And that's why I'm a proud sponsor of the Medicare for All legislation by Reps Jayapal and Dingell.
And obviously, this is going to be a huge issue on the Democratic presidential trail. When you look at the polling data, gun control is an issue. Health care is a top issue. Climate change is a top issue. And I do want to quickly get in a question from you. A few moments ago, I saw your tweet speaking against this bill that Governor Ron DeSantis is going to sign in Florida, arming teachers, which a lot of folks say makes no sense whatsoever. And so when you look at those three issues, again, you have on one hand approval rating for Donald Trump, his handling of the economy at 56%, not his overall approval rating that, but those three other issues are still going to be huge. Do you believe that they will also resonate with those independent voters, those white voters who went for Trump, those folks who in red state America, because like it or not, they're impacted by climate change. They're impacted by gun violence in schools and healthcare.
And that's the point. That's why, the fact that we are so polarized is perplexing, because the issues that you just named, gun control, gun violence is a public health crisis and epidemic in this country, as is the residual trauma that it leaves in its wake. That is an urban issue. That is a suburban issue. That is a rural issue. This is not anyone, coming for your amendment rights. This is the acknowledgement that for every household that has a gun, there's an increased likelihood that a child will die accidentally at the hand of that gun, or that there might be a domestic violence, a situation, or a suicide. So this is bigger than party. This is an issue of national consequence. I'm so glad you said health care, because that's where we need to get to. We've been having long debates around health coverage, around insurance coverage, but what we need is health care. So it is my hope that as we make our way down this 2020 path, that it will become clearer to people that we do have a responsibility. It's incumbent upon us to act boldly, because these are issues of consequence to all Americans, even if the burden of some of these issues, the resiliency of climate change, those that are most vulnerable to extreme weather and sea level rise, gun violence, health disparities are disproportionately bore by some communities, by our communities more than others, that these are issues of consequence to all the American people. And on your question around my latest tweet, I do want to give a shout out to my sister in service, Johanna Hayes, out of Connecticut, a former National Teacher of the Year, who put forward legislation that would deny the use of federal funds to arm teachers. This is not going to make any of us any safer.
And I'm going to sneak in one more question. The Congressional Black Caucus has sent a letter to SiriusXM blasting them for no blacks on their board of directors, no African Americans in their management. It was signed by Congresswoman Karen Bass, G.K. Butterfield, and Barbara Lee. With Democrats now controlling the House, this is an issue, of course, those of us in NABJ. We've been pressing CNN on no black executives as well. And I've had some people who say, well, why are you guys fighting this? The reality is, the fact that you can't find any black folks to be in radio of all mediums to be an executive, and then when you talk about on the board of directors, this is us being frozen out of important positions, has an impact on wealth building, has an impact on down generational line. And I just think that, it is important for the CBC to hold these publicly traded companies accountable because it makes no sense in 2019. We're still talking about literally no African Americans in the C-suite, no African Americans on the board of directors of SiriusXM Radio.
Well, I just want to also just give it up to you and thank you. You have been so vigilant in this space and on so many other issues relative to racial, social, and economic justice. And I do want to thank our chairwoman. I serve on financial services in addition to serving on oversight and reform, Maxine Waters. Unprecedented. We created the first D&I, Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee, in the history of Congress. And these are the sorts of things that are happening in this brand new Congress. The CBC, this is the largest delegation we've had in our history, 55 members. And what is the point of growing our representation if we don't flex that muscle? So you have our commitment and our solidarity, in this space for all the reasons which you've already outlined, and continue to call on us. It's a new day. So very, very proud to be a part of this CBC. Just in this last cycle, 9 new members of the Congressional Black Caucus and 5 black women. So. All
right. Well, Congresswoman Pressley, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Keep giving them help.
And we're filming from Shirley Chisholm's office, my office. So she had 3 offices in her 8-year tenure, and this office, Longworth 1108, was the first. So we've got some good mojo going on here. Come check us out.
I will do. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
All right, y'all. More crazy white people.
I'm white. I got you, huh?
Illegally selling water without a permit on my property.
Whoa! Hey!
You don't live here.
I'm uncomfortable.
All right, a student at Ohio high school is apologizing for a racist prom proposal sign that got him banned from the prom. The Clear Fork High School student carried a sign that read, "If I was black, I'd be picking cotton, but I'm white, so I'm picking you for the prom."
That's so weird.
Teresa, what the hell wrong with these white folks? Teresa?
On the last show, the opioid crisis and really trying to get a handle on this, it's not happening as of yet. So it's ignorant. But I did like the response that the school district put out in their statement. And they are holding that student accountable, and that student is no longer going to prom. But they also said in their statement that they serve it as a lesson to the rest of their student body, and they look for a strict recourse on his actions. But it also shows, again, another dynamic from our youth, that they are seeing what our president is doing amongst other Republicans who are showing ignorance, not only in the legislator in their elected office, but in their hometown. And so, this white privilege is at its highest extent. And it's unfortunate that, again, we are once again a target, and they feel comfortable enough to do it.
Johanna.
I think what's happening here is that this type of behavior has been around for a while. The difference in 2019 versus, let's say, 2005 is that now there's social media, right? We can expose this kind of behavior, but this is nothing new, right? I think black people can tell you, the number of times they've been discriminated against and overt discrimination. We're not talking about the discrimination that is hidden through administrative laws and policies. We're talking about the kind of racism that is in your face, right? So I think that social media is exposing a lot of these racist behaviors. And I'm happy the school district, the principal at this particular school is taking a stance on it and using this student as an example as to what you should not do as a white person. And it's just unacceptable. Even if you were black, that kind of behavior and that kind of language
people don't carry on like that. This was gratuitous racism. It wasn't like in the context of somebody did something to someone and someone said, this is just gratuitous. So the questions I have, who is his mama and daddy? Ebonics intended. Who is his mama and daddy? What do they talk about at the dinner table? Where did he come from? Where did he get the idea that this was cute? And did he think the girl that he was asking to go to prom would think this nonsense was cute too? So then who is her mama and daddy? And where did they come from? Because there is evil racism, there's administrative, legal racism, but there's just gratuitous racism. And this was just gratuitous. It was unnecessary. It did not enhance the promposal. It just made him look like an idiot. So I want to know why. I'm glad the district responded. I think not only should they ban him from prom, they should ban his behind from graduation too. Don't let him march. I keep telling y'all, white folks have lost their damn mind with Donald. They didn't have minds in the first place. No, they don't. They've lost their damn mind with Donald Trump in the White House. He's empowered them. I'm telling you, he's unleashed this stuff. He's absolutely empowered crazy ass white folks. And guess what? Y'all keep acting a fool. I'm gonna keep exposing you. All right, folks. We of course all week we've been talking and giving props and attention to John Singleton, of course, the director who passed away on Monday at the age of 51, suffering a stroke a couple of weeks earlier. And one of the institutions that he has always supported has been the American Black Film Festival. Now, initially it was the Acapulco Black Film Festival, but he always had a frequent presence there. I had a chance to, of course, sit down and interview John a couple of years ago from the main stage. A great conversation. We're trying to get that video because we would love to show you because it was really a fascinating conversation about his thoughts on directing, on movies, and all the projects that he's working on. And my next guest, Jeff Friday, is the co-founder of the American Black Film Festival. He joins us right now. Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. What's up, Brother Roland?
Man, good to see you. It certainly had to be a shock to you, as to so many others, the death of John Singleton. But as I said, he was a huge supporter of ABFF.
That's an understatement. I don't know if Ivan told you the story, and you've been a huge supporter as well. But I know I had this silly idea after going to Sundance in 1997 about doing a Black Film Fest, and no idea who would show up. And one of the first 5 people I called was John, and that we call it the original 5. It was Halle Berry, John Singleton, Spike Lee, Bill Duke, and Robert Townsend. And since 1997, John has probably attended maybe 16 of the 22 we've done already. And just what you said, I mean, he's done everything, man. We premiered Baby Boy. I actually met Taraji and Tyrese in Miami when we did Baby Boy. He brought his current show Snowfall. He sat for conversations. He's done master classes. He's met with kids. I mean, he's been probably one of the most important people in our history, man. And I miss him so much. And it's going to be so strange to not have him there, and I'm just very grateful that we've had John Singleton on this ride with ABFF.
Yesterday, Stephanie Elaine was on the show, and she talked about just a number of people who he mentored. Even though he only directed 8 movies, big screen movies, that you talk about television, executive producing, and that was also the key. The folks who've been able to go to ABFF, to be able to interact, to meet, to talk with, to bounce an idea off of, run something by you, that to me is also the value of an American Black Film Festival, because you can actually touch these individuals who you otherwise would never get a chance to even meet or talk to. And John did it.
I remember in 1997, we were talking about how we make the ABFF special and unlike, how we make it a Hollywood event that doesn't feel like a Hollywood event. And I always knew that if we can get Black stars and Black people in this business and film and TV, get them away from LA and put them in this community where they start to touch and feel and nurture. Because I have this belief, man, that Black people really do love each other. I know we don't treat each other so great all the time. We're very self-critical, But at the core, we all kind of come from the same roots. We all sat around the same dinner table eating same soul food, you know, depending whether you're from Newark, New Jersey or Chicago. And I just think that we're more alike than we are different. And really the magic of our event is the fact that people like John and Spike Lee and Robert Townsend do connect. They do take time for young people. And the legacy is great, man. And like I said, John Singleton has never told me no. I cannot think of one time that I've asked him to do something, and we've been buddies for 25 years, that he's told me no. And John is as busy as anybody. John has always been working, right? So he's only directed 8 movies, but he's done a lot of other things in the EP world and producing, and he's never told me no. So the way I like to, what I've been doing interviews all week, and I tell people, because John's never told me no, he's never told our community no, and we all just owe him a great deal of gratitude, man.
When you talk about that connection and the people who he was able to bring in, ABFF provides that platform. When you look at the Maury Hardwicks, you look at Will Packer, you look at the people who are doing these amazing things. To have
Ryan Coogler,
absolutely.
Right.
I mean, to have a place where we can go and be us, where we can be vulnerable, where we can actually get advice. That to me is also what's great. And then to take that same attitude when you're not at ABFF, that to me is also, I think, the beauty and power of John Singleton, because that was who he was. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to do this thing only because I'm at this event. It's, look, I can't make a difference if it's all about me. He couldn't direct everything. He couldn't produce everything. But all of a sudden, if you look back now, and as we are, he dies at 51. But if you look at, again, the tentacles, you realize how huge of an influence he had way beyond just him.
Absolutely. You know what? Just watch. We're going to do a big tribute to him this year. Now, we haven't announced it publicly yet, so I guess you're the first to hear it. You're my brother, so I got to tell you first. But we're going to do a big thing. I will say, I won't get specific yet, but we're going to do a big. You will know by the time you leave Miami how much Brother John meant to us. And if you watch Boys in the Hood, and you look at those stars, look at how successful everybody in that movie is. You know, that's really, Taraji's one example, and Taraji and Tyrese. But if you ask, Ice Cube says that John Singleton convinced him that he could play some of the roles that he played. So John lived it, man. He was not about, you said about himself. He was about us. And everything that he did and every person that he touched, is living proof that he was a community-minded person. And he knew that his legacy would be really judged based on everybody that he helped get to second base, and some have even hit home runs and grand slams now. So we need more people in our industry like him. This is an industry of kind of self-centered people. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but it is what it is. And we're gonna miss John, man. And hopefully will take this moment to reflect on all the good that he did, and some of us will start behaving like John did and be more community-minded.
So I am, Henry, this is the last question here. I'm playing a video here just from my Instagram page. Henry, you can pull it up if you can. This was, of course, me. In 2017, we were having fun. It was after I did the interview with him on stage. We were taking photos backstage. I said, it's time for a fun photo. And then John stayed serious. I was like, damn, John, come on. I said, take a fun photo. Then, of course, he had this hard look. And what was interesting about that, again, people will come up to him and they would think, oh, man, he is an unapproachable brother. But he was funny as all get out. He loved to laugh, but that was just sort of that growing up where he did, that sort of a hard exterior. That was not who he was. He was serious, but he also was a fun-loving guy.
Yeah, he was serious about his business, right? But John grew up in South Central. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. So, we can't. But I cried movies, so we can pretend that we hardcore if we want to. But he's one of the sweetest guys you'll ever want to meet, And that video, I was standing there when you guys did that, which is why I was laughing. And I'm going to get you a clip from that interview you did, because that interview was that the same year you did the interview on stage with him?
Yeah, that was 2017.
That was magic, man. There was a couple of pieces of that video that we love your viewers to check out too. So we're gonna get you a clip from that so you can share that with folks too. But kudos to you too, bro. And don't forget yourself, man. I know this is about John, but you've been a champion of everything that we've done, for many years now. I'm also very thankful to you. Every platform you've had, you've brought in there and you've covered us. And it's really important, man, if we all kind of make this a community thing.
Well, I appreciate that. And in fact, the last thing here, I'm going to show this photo. I got an email, y'all, from a brother named Michael Wyatt. He was a photographer. He sent me an email. He saw the clip on ABFF the interview, and then when I posted that video, he said, "Roland, I was the photographer who shot the photo when you were joking with John," and he said, "I want you to have it." And he's sending me a framed copy, but he emailed it. So y'all just saw the video. This was the actual photo that we took. So I knew we couldn't finish the week without talking to you, Jeff, about John Singleton. We appreciate it. Again, he was a huge supporter of you and your wife, Nicole, and everybody at ABFF. And it will be a lot different when we're there in June in Miami. And we don't get to see John Singleton, but he'll certainly be there in spirit.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Send me that photo, too. I love that. I'll put it up in my office.
I'll send it to you right now. All right, Jeff Ryder, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I want to thank Teresa. want to thank Johanna. want to thank Julian for being on the show today. Thank you so very much. A lot of stuff we covered. Hey, tomorrow, University of Virginia Lynchburg, I'm going to be giving the commencement speech to the graduates there. Looking forward to that. Monday, we'll be broadcasting from Los Angeles. I'll be there for the George Lopez Celebrity Golf Tournament. And so all of George's friends, you name, all the comedians, they're all going to be there. And so we look forward to hearing from them on Monday's show as well. And so lots of stuff going on. If you want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered, please do so by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar you give goes to support what we do, being able to give you a news and perspective you're not going to get anywhere else. That's why we do this. And more folks have been signing up. I sent a tweet out today. Our goal today, we want 100 people. 100 people to sign up this weekend to join our Bring the Funk fan club again, because earlier this week on Tuesday we talked about our tribute to John Singleton. Let me be real clear. Ain't no black news on these cable networks. There are 8 cable networks that target African Americans, y'all. 8. They produce 1,344 hours of content a week. Not a single hour is dedicated to black news. If you saw tributes this week to John Singleton, they might have shown his movie. They might have shown something else about one of his movies. But this week we heard from the very people who worked with him, who was alongside him. That's why we've got to have our own platforms, and your dollars make that possible. And so we're going to end the show rolling the credits of all of our folks who are members of our Bring the Funk fan club. If you don't see your name, if you give in and you don't see your name, send me an email. We'll actually get that done so you can pay via Cash App, PayPal, Square, or even send us a payment to our office. Does not matter any amount, because this is about creating something that is for us, by us, and again, through our perspective, through our prism. And so y'all have an absolute great weekend. Holla!